Hello and welcome to our show. My name is João Fernandes, founder and CEO of DocDigitizer, and I will be your host for today's episode of Automation Notes. Today we have an amazing guest, Yannick from Sheetgo. So, hi Yannick, thank you for being on our show.
Hi, I don't know about amazing, but thank you for inviting.
Can you share with our audience who you are and what you do at Sheetgo?
Sure. My name is Yannick. I am the CEO and co-founder of Sheetgo. So what I am, I guess, the guy that does anything that nobody else wants to do at the company. That's what I guess CEOs do. Um, and that's it. I don't know if you want to for me to tell you some of my personal life or not, but that's at
Yes,
a
yes,
business
please
level, that's what
share.
I
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Can you share some of your interests? Because I know that you
Sure.
are very active in
I
several
am.
hobbies. So,
I am. I love things. So recently, I'm doing art installations by taking things that my wife is destroying in the house and making something out of it. Hence my
please,
background.
please don't tell me that your one of your art pieces Sheetgo.
Yeah, well, we'll talk a little bit about this and the reason why I did Sheetgo. And part of it is because I have a lot of hobbies. So I love surfing. I'm not good at it though. Tennis, that is something that I'm not terribly bad at. Love running, love any sports. I love horses. Playing polo if I can afford it. And then being with my kids. I love just spending time with the kids in the garden. Love gardening. Love doing art installations, music, singing, um, writing books. So I do a bit of it, and not very well, but I do a lot of things.
And going back to 2016, I think it was the year you founded Sheetgo. Uh, what drove you to start this project, and what is different in the market from that time to now? Um, and
Yeah.
what was really the problem you were trying to solve?
So the idea actually comes from 2009, and and I was actually speaking to someone in the team yesterday to see if we should get back to the roots of all this. Um, Back then, as a bit like today, I had a business, and but the difference is that back then I had a business, a real business, construction business, in the south of South America, in Brazil, in south of Brazil, and I wanted to be able to manage the business wherever I was. I was the CEO of that company, and um, and so I loved traveling. I was younger back then, and I wanted to be able to live in the US, in Europe, and have the business in Brazil, and be able to do everything from this thing that had just come out, which is an iPad, and from a tactile phone, which had just come out, or from a computer. And I couldn't find any way to kind of piece it together. So I ended up piecing together a management system using what was back then Google Docs and Google products. And I was able to more or less create one. And back then thought, I wonder if other people could, use that. And I did ask people, and people really loved what we had done. And even Google called me and flew me over to Mountain View, and they said, "Oh, why don't you build a business out of this?" So back then, my business of real estate grew, and it became kind of um, cumbersome to be able to build two businesses at once. And also, I didn't know how to replicate it in a scalable way. So basically, I continued this construction business we had in Brazil until finally I was able to put some time away and be able to concentrate on this idea of Sheetgo. And basically, we had come up with an idea of how to make this ability to automate something online possible for others. And that's why we started in 2016. Short story long.
And what is Sheetgo nowadays? Because it is probably very different from this initial idea, right?
It is. Our idea is to be for folks to be able to automate processes starting from a spreadsheet, and um, and actually it hasn't changed because even the first versions that were not scalable and that I had used for my construction business in 2010. Used spreadsheets, used docs, used email, used calendar, and it was the same. It was just not scalable. So the idea was always the same, and in fact, it continues to be the same.
Perfect. It means that there is a clear vision at the beginning, and I think this is shared among many other startups. So although the product itself is slightly different, it has different flavors, but the idea, the problem that he targets, is it's still the same from that founding moment to nowadays. I think based on what I saw on your website and based on what I know, you are somewhere a mix between RPA, BPM, ATL, low code, which is very difficult to put you on one single category.
It is.
So what is really your category, and is it difficult for your customers to understand what you do and what they are looking for?
Now you know me too well, Jean. Yes, it's difficult because basically, I'll give you some examples after, but we see uses for everything from managing hockey leagues to managing inventory to big airlines managing logistics with us. And at the end of the day, the reason for this is there's a billion people that use spreadsheets in the world. And they say it's more than that nowadays. Everybody has access to this. Everybody knows how to use it. And you have all these other systems out there, ERP and SaaS out there, that are trying to cover all these things. But there's so many systems out there. The default continues to be spreadsheets. Yeah, so the usage is difficult to explain. To give you an idea, we made 237 use cases last year, which we're still trying to explain and put out there. And I think we need to do even a better job at explaining all the things you can do. And yes, I mean, we have heard all those buzzwords. We've called ourselves RPM for dummies, RPA for dummies, BPM for dummies. We can use all these nomenclatures. And we still every day have to explain to investors and to clients exactly where we fit with all this. So it's our daily.
So what are your target customers, and what drives them to use Sheetgo? You mentioned that you have a lot of different use cases, but if you can standardize them, what do you think drives people to use Sheetgo?
Yeah, I mean, we've created a buyer persona. So I have this friend of mine who uses animals to help us to figure out who our buyer persona is, and we found that the buyer persona is less dependent of the size of the company or the industry, but more of how they approach their work every day. So our buyer persona is someone that uses and normally sometimes loves and hates spreadsheets, loves to use to be able to make their work more automated and better, and they usually have a little bit of budget to do this using a credit card or whatever. And so this tends to be a lot in smaller companies, more senior folks, in medium companies, more medium folks, and in large companies, more junior folks, basically. And then when we get into some of these companies, they tell their friends, and then they start using us, and then eventually, hopefully, we get a call, because we actually haven't been the best at proactively calling them, that they want to buy multiple licenses. And then the other thing we see is that, let's say that they create a solution for consolidating information from multiple subsidiaries. we might end up seeing that the company has 5 licenses and there's maybe 100, 200, thousands of people depending on Sheetgo to automate the processes and the data that they have and they see in the spreadsheets they have. So yeah, that's I guess that's what we target or the people that target us, better said.
Fantastic. And can you share perhaps one or two success cases or even typical use cases that our audience can use as a benchmark
Yeah,
to know more about Cheatcode?
yeah, sure. So the first, I think one that I really like is budgeting. Budgeting tends to be in one of those that everybody seems to have a budget and then they're actual somewhere. And then
Yeah.
budgets, you need to consolidate information from many places. And in fact, the first reason I created the first version of Sheetgo back in 2009 was because of that. I was building a budget on construction. I need information from different places. Then I felt that we're having different versions and we had information from different places. So I love that. That as an example. There's a company in Australia that they do festivals. They had a terrible time during COVID, but they do festivals, and every festival is a different budget, and they have 6 different departments for every festival that happens once or twice a month all over Australia, trying to piece the information together. So basically, they piece together, they build a spreadsheet that is fed from 15 different departments for every festival, and then they create new projects all the time. And that they do with Sheetgo, it's all automated, and basically with that, they can very fast create proposals, know what's going on, then figure out what's actuals versus their budgets, and basically they've created a system with us. That's one that I love because it was the kind of the first reason I made it.
And
We have many.
everybody has that problem. Every company has almost has that problem. In particular, the SMBs, right?
In particular SMBs. You'd be surprised though, talking about examples, we have some large companies that there's some I cannot name. For example, one that manages their playlists for all of their users worldwide, and you can imagine who that company is, but imagine that. Or we have large French, we can name them, Early Key, the a multinational that has bought many companies in Asia, and they consolidate all of their financials with Sheetgo because they have data warehouse systems, they have SAP, they have everything, but they use at the end of the day spreadsheets to be able to centralize all of their finances in Asia. That's a good example for finance one as well. But we see sales management, inventory management, bookkeeping, payroll, HR. We see it all.
And how much technical skills are required to build this kind of automations? Is that something that average user that uses Excel can do, or it requires slightly more skills than that?
So our usual customer is someone that is pretty good with spreadsheets. And the reason is not because they have to be good with spreadsheets to use Sheetgo, but because that's the way that they realize the potential
Yeah.
of what Sheetgo
Yeah.
can do for them. Having said that, we have seen customers that don't know how to make a formula in a spreadsheet, yet know how to use Sheetgo. So that's how easy it can be. Then we have those folks that maybe IT administrators or those folks that are trying to do innovation or automation projects in larger companies, or digitalization as they call it also. And they know that they could actually recreate this in programming if they do some fancy programming. But because they know that, they also realize that if they put in Sheetgo, they don't have to deal with all the maintenance of having to do specific programming for each of their companies or departments. So we do see that we have some folks that are very savvy and still realize that it's much better to use a scalable product like ours.
When you started in 2016, probably nobody was talking about automation, so there was no trend. But nowadays it's a huge trend. Everybody's talking about it, and now you combine automation with AI. Do you think that this is just a trend, or there is more to that?
Yeah, I mean, I started in technology back when I was 19 with doing an intranet for a company called FedEx in the US, and we were automating back then. We're still automating today, and AI is going to be automating for us soon. So I
Or
think it's
automating us?
or automating us, right? So I think, and this is what I was referring to at the beginning of this conversation. The reason I did this was because I wanted to have the freedom to work wherever, whenever, yet still be productive. And automation on the cloud allows us to do that and allows us to focus on the things we really love and we're good at as people and as humans. So I think we all have something unique to bring to the table. And if we can automate all those other things that we have to do anyways, then we can provide even more value. So I think this is a trend to stay. I don't know what name we will have, but this trend will stay.
And based on your experience, because I think you already saw a lot of things and a lot of projects failing. Where do you see people failing when starting to deploy automation technologies? Why they fail, and is there any common pitfalls on that?
I think the biggest pitfall for this and anything is not getting started. So
That is the worst one, right?
I think that is the worst one. I think, and it's not necessarily the client's fault, right? It's not the user's fault. It's we're inundated with solutions. So if I am going to go with Sheetgo, have I seen every other possible alternative that I couldn't be
Yeah.
using something else, right? So I think our job, my job especially, has to be that, hey, just get started with us, and you can back out of this afterwards. And all I'm doing is allowing you to use the technology that's most commonly used in the world, which is Excel, Sheets, documents, email. I'm not making you be a programmer. I don't want you to learn something brand new that's going to go away in no time. This is not a brand new like Airtable or anything. This is what everybody uses, and that's what I want to lean on. So that's kind of the message that we need to get better at speaking, because I want people to get started, have a good life, enjoy your kids. I have 5 kids, and the more time I spend with them, the more beautiful life is. So I want people to just get started.
And at some point, then is better than perfect. But I would say that is very much connected with the initial licensing models of this technology that required you to do some big investments up front. So people were very afraid of making the decision because there was a huge risk if they failed. But nowadays there are so much technologies available in subscription models where you can just subscribe 1 month, try it out, see where it takes you, and probably at the end of the day you will not solve all your challenges with the same tool. So you will need to have like this toolkit where you take advantage of some tools to do something and another tools to do
Others.
another thing. So yeah, I think now the experimentation is key, and finally we have available uh, business models that allow companies to test without many risks. So that is a very, very good thing, I think.
I
Um,
think so. I think potentially first people need to just get started. Start doing. You find Sheetgo, start using it. Like you said, you pay the monthly fee, and eventually you love it. You get the annual fee for a bit of a discount, time value of money for everybody. But I do see that um, what made a company like Salesforce at the beginning so popular. They were anti-software. I don't know if you remember those campaigns.
Yeah, yeah,
I, some of us, I don't know, all of us that are using CRMs today, and I'm not going to name them all, um, you end up using some of these solutions that are really difficult to get out of
yeah,
and are not that flexible and don't allow you to get out. So I think, I'm not going to say that, I'm anti Salesforce, but I'm beginning to think that potentially I'm a bit anti SaaS as we know it right now, because some of these companies that have grown because of that now have become what Siebel was
yeah,
back in the day, or SAP.
yeah.
So I like these little startups with good technology.
And you see that in particular nowadays when they raised their prices and you have this huge lock-in that you cannot avoid. So it's very hard. And that leads to my next question. I know that you are a serial entrepreneur. And I'm very curious to know your current feelings about the the environment on startups, on these massive layoffs that we are witnessing, and the access to venture capital. So, what is really happening from a founder point of view?
I have no idea what's happening, but I mean, what I can tell you is what I can, let's say, control. For us, it's always been very important to be lean. So the way we've done that is we hire some of the best folks from places that the quality of life is good, but not as expensive. So we have folks in great places like Brazil and Argentina, India, Tunisia, and we've created a remote first company. And part of the reason is because of our culture of hey, we want to give people the freedom to automate and all those things. So it's all kind of part of what we believe. So I believe, I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett. Berkshire Hathaway, and the way that they look at companies is just fundamentals. Do you really have a business? And I think the easy access to money over the last X years, even after COVID, has created a lot of companies that weren't real businesses. I even heard of some founders the other day, pretty serious founders. I'm not going to name them, but I thought, wow, the reason that they started a company, becoming founders, is because it was cooler than being an investment banker nowadays. And that's kind of sad, right? Because investment
Yeah, it
bankers
is.
were there because that's where the money was and what was cool. So it's almost as if uh, founders became founders because that's what the money is. And frankly, the best founders I know are not in it for the money.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But but but, but
yeah,
if but they need money. So
they
the having less access to venture capital, it's putting some struggles on a lot of companies, right?
I think when everything is going really well, you can discern the good from the bad. When
Yeah,
everything's going really bad, you cannot discern the good from the bad, right? So these extremes are really difficult for, especially the good ones, I'd say. Uh, it's bad for the bad ones, but they were bad anyways. So, but it's bad for the good ones. So it's you just need to ride both waves, and somewhere in the middle, if you're good, somebody will see you, hopefully.
yeah, and focus on the customers and on generating money, so you can keep up with your cash burn. That is also something that I think many companies realized that they were required to generate money and have happy customers and make a sustainable business. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
um,
difficult,
yeah, it
and
is.
I think if you're a decent entrepreneur, you have a lot of ideas, right? So I'm terrible at this. I have too many ideas and too many initiatives. So I have a team that constantly gets frustrated with me and my ideas. So fortunately, we have quarterly evaluations, and I get messed up by the team if I distract them too much. And fortunately, I have a great relationship with our board, and they also know how I am and try to restrict those ideas. So I think having complementary folks, you need to have ideas and you need to innovate. That's what we're in here for. But you need to really concentrate, like you said, on where you're creating value, making business, and all that. So there's I think, a good balance there.
What is the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur?
What is the artist? Sorry.
Hardest thing, yeah.
Oh, the hardest thing. I think just keeping motivated. Sometimes it's, you have to deal with a lot of stuff. And sometimes, and it's always our own fault, right? It's not like you can blame anyone. If you have the wrong investor, you brought that wrong investor, and you're going to suffer it. If you want to take that investor out, well, you decided to take it out, and you're going to suffer for it. If you decide to, go and develop lots of features because you really believe in it, and then your customers get confused, well, that's your fault. Um, if you didn't innovate enough and then some other competitor kicks your ass, that's your fault too. So just it can be very lonely. So I know that you have a very close business partner. That's great. It can be frustrating. Then you see, you've got FOMO. So you've got your friends that maybe they did a great exit, and you're still, trying to pay the bills. You've got friends that became investment bankers, and they're doing, they have a good life, and they have their Porsches and their tranquility, and you're still like at it. So that sometimes is hard. Um, so I think the one thing, I've had my failures, strong failures in the past, and I think the one thing that I'd say really helps is when you have a somewhat of a balance with other things. Because even if it fails, you went for it, and yet you have your sports or your family or your art,
Yeah.
or your health for sure. Some people suffer from health, mental health, physical health, and I've had all of the above, by the way. So I think that's super important.
Perfect. Going back to automation and to close the episode, where do you see this space, this intelligent automation space 5 years from now?
Who the hell knows? Someone told me yesterday that there's this saying which I really like. You'd be surprised how little can be done in 1 year, but you'd be surprised how much can be done in 10 years. And so the same thing goes for 5 years, by the way.
Yeah.
And right now, imagine how much is changing in 1 year. I mean, I have friends in AI that tell me this whole thing of ChatGPT for them is not a surprise. It's all about application. And it's, people shouldn't be in our space, in our world, that we're all privileged to live in, where we work with software and big companies and white collar. I think a lot of people have to be worried. This is a meteor shower that's coming right now. I think a lot of these meteors are burning on the atmosphere, but there's some there that are going to go through. And we just have to really be on the lookout. And I think it's all about how you apply it for your customers. At the end of the day, no matter what technology it is, if it's a rock, if it's fire, if it's water, if it's electricity.
Yeah. I was reading a very nice article about GTP3, and it was discussing this feature with AI, and there was a part of the text that mentioned that AI loves our weaknesses as human beings. So we are lazy by nature, we are curious by nature, we try to save as much energy as possible, and we are very biased in the way we see things. And all of those weaknesses are explored by AI in a way that we are not really prepared as a species. And I think we should be very careful, because we are, I think, very close to being completely outrun without noticing that we are being outrun, which is like because uh, if we use AI to facilitate our lives, we need to have some kind of control over that, and not allowing the technology to explore our weaknesses. And I think so. The article is very cool, which leads me to the last question.
Sure.
What is your suggestion of a book, podcast, or person to follow if to know more about this space?
You, I think. I think what you are doing and your team, your co-founder, you write things about digitalization. I think you put it in pretty good context. I actually follow you seriously, actually, for this space. I actually don't. I follow this and maybe everything around SaaS Capital,
Yeah.
SaaS reports, and I follow stocks. Obviously I'm a Warren Buffett fan, but that's different. So I actually most of my efforts of reading go towards more things outside of digitalization, um, because, and I'm only discovering this lately, it goes back to the original reason why I wanted to do this. If if you love spending time doing some things that only humans can do, which is, art with your hands, gardening, spending time with your children, doing
Or being
sports,
bad at surfing.
or being really bad at surfing like me. Um, those things, which I love to do, is what motivates me in my day to day to automate.
Yeah, perfect. What is next for you and Sheetgo, and how can our audience reach out to you?
Yeah, for us, look out for potential acquisition that we will be doing. We are we're going to be doing some things that are going to allow folks to truly understand finally what the hell we do and apply it from day one without being so worried about getting started. That's going to be our main focus. And we are on our way to do that. To get to contact us, LinkedIn, Yannick Rold or Yannick van der Vaart. You can also ping me through sheetgo.com in a chat there, and Yannick at sheetgo.com. As long as you're not spamming me, just Yannick at sheetgo.com. Pretty easy going, and love to hear from folks.
Fantastic. Yannick, hosting this episode was really a pleasure to me. So we have been in touch. We share the same shareholders, the same investors, let's say it. And so I would love to thank you for chatting with me and for being on our show.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I actually feel quite honored because I normally am the one listening to you. So for once, I actually could say something to you this time.
Perfect. I've been your host, João Fernandes, and this